Hi, everyone. This is the podcast Two Grumpy Old Men. I'm Tim Bagwell.
And I'm Rich Carling.
We're two grumpy old men who have worked in IT, who have worked as in grassroots political campaigns, including our own, and we're getting together to
Yeah, that's
look
right.
at the world and comment on things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have both run for office a few times.
A few times, yes, a few
Yes,
times,
yes.
yes. And then
So
and then I was told not to do that anymore.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I was told the same thing.
yeah,
I was told the same thing. It's like, oh, no, you don't
exactly.
want to do that anymore.
But we are
That's
allowed to observe. We are allowed
yes,
to observe and report. So
exactly, exactly.
today, as I was perusing today, well, this week I get to choose the topic. As I was perusing, as I was perusing the internet and my YouTube, whatever the algorithm is feeding me, that's developed with them. What came to my attention was, especially as both politician and IT guy, was the effort by Peter Thiel to put together a universal database of all Americans and bring that all together under his corporation and help the administration in their efforts to do many things. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's interesting. Well, yeah, I have some interesting comments, but what do you think about this, Rich?
Well, I think it ties in a lot with what Musk was trying to do, Elon Musk, and with Dodge. And I call it Dodge on purpose. All right, I know a lot of people out there are pronouncing it Doge, or Doge or something like that, but I call it Dodge because, in my honest opinion, what I think they were trying to do was to basically decimate all of the departments that were investigating both Trump and Musk in the first place, and then two, decimate the rest of them so that they can't possibly investigate them for any future transgressions that they may commit. But
Right.
that part of doing that with Dodge was that they were trying to basically break into a lot of the databases that the federal government had, such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. And in my opinion, the whole reason they were doing that was so that they could set up this database. Yeah, Peter Thiel is trying to set it up. I think I pronounced his name right. I don't know.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I saw him being interviewed, and this is he was making the pitch that this will, we have to be ahead of everybody else, and this will help us be ahead of everybody else, and we'll be able to, make greater progress. Which, the IT world when we were professionally growing up in it in the '90s, that was the big deal. It was gonna make the economics so much better. It was going to distribute goods and information so much better and more freedom for everyone. And it's turned in quite the opposite of that, as I think many of these things often do. What uh, what this what struck me as the problem with it is that accounts and we have accounts. You have an account with Mastercard, you have an account with Visa, you have an account with your bank. And you have an account with Social Security, you have an account with the IRS. Those accounts are the anchor for the contract between each individual and that organization.
Yep. Yep.
Right, and there's specific procedures have to be followed when you share information, when you share that information between between systems, and they're trying to break all that down. They're trying
Yeah.
to break all that down. So, and what's amusing about it with the billionaires, and Dodge Doge, uh, I don't know if you're going to convert me on that. Is
Mm.
that they think they're a huge business, but their huge business still is minuscule compared to the economy of the United States and the economy of the world,
Yes.
and the millions of people that are involved. But they think they can engineer it and make it
Oh,
work.
AI. That's
Yeah.
the answer.
Well, and they think that they think that their PayPal. He kind of got started with PayPal and eBay. that those transactions can be traded, can be translated into, an identity, and you're going to see everybody's stuff. And the problem is, as we know from databases, things get screwed up, data gets mismatched, and
Oh yeah.
and there are many people. There are at least 16 Tim Bagwells in the United States, and
How
and
many? Mm.
that many. It's surprising. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how
I,
many
I,
Rich Carlings there are.
I'm surprised I haven't searched that.
Yeah. Well,
Being
I know
what?
there's at least one other Rich Garling in the world, and that's only because when I first went for my domain name, I wanted it to be Richard Garling, and some guy in Germany already owned it. So it's like going, oh, I guess I got to go for Rich Garling.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
so so they think that they can manage 350 million people there as an account with them, the government, and and manage all the accounts basically, control of all the accounts, access to all the accounts. You know,
So what could go wrong in all of that?
what could go wrong?
You know?
Everything.
Well, yeah.
Well,
I
let
mean,
me
you
get
got
this.
a company that's sitting there dictating. Well, let's put it this way: that company would basically own the database, and they're gonna what give it to the government, or allow the government access. What could go wrong?
Right, right. Well, I'll give you an example from my research, from my dissertation on student loans back in the 90s. And one of the things that was going on there is that I ran across this. I ran across this anecdotally. Specifically, I have a story about I was working at a lab, and I walked through the lab room. I was doing database work. I walked through the lab room, and there's a young fellow on the phone, and he's saying, "Oh, I'll get to that. I'll pay it. I'll get I'm like, excuse me, but were you talking to by any chance? Were you talking to United Student Aid Funds?" I said, they actually called you at work. I'm just checking here. They actually called you at work to talk to you about your loans and interrupt your work, to talk to you about your student loans. He said, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, because they're doing it all over the place. What they would do, and he was still in school. And that was another thing you would run across is that, well, first of all, actually, I don't know if he was still in school, but they were calling at their place of employment, which they, as a government sponsored program, you would think they'd be able to do. And then I also saw, and you may have, everyone's, I think, has seen this, your student is still in school and they're getting the calls on late payments. And what the guarantors, the people collecting, were doing, they were establishing a due diligence file. So they'd say, oh, there's a year we tried to collect from this guy. They tell the government there was a year, and that would pad the year. So a certain number of them, after they graduated, would not be paying, and they would tag another year onto it. And then they would say, this person's in default, and pay us for guaranteeing the loan, and then you U.S. government, you're the collector now, or whoever they sell it to are the collector now. So they're able to mock the data up, to illegally mock the data up on a
Well,
collection.
let me ask you real quick, because my understanding of student loans, at least when I had one, is I didn't have to start paying on the thing until after I finished school.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct. But they would start, student loan guarantors would start collecting before that so that the file, and this is the database, there's the student loan number associated with that person is in the database, and then all these collections. A phone call was made. A phone call was made. A phone call was made. They're not making payments. By the time they get shipped off to the government, it's not matched against. Oh, he just graduated now. that
Yeah,
that
yeah, they're
that
not matching
audit
up to the university. Yeah.
that audit was not really taking place. That audit was not really taking place because they just tag it. They could tag a year onto it, and so they could more quickly get to on those who did default. They could get there quicker. They could get
So
there quicker. So fudging the data, and there are perverse incentives. There are perverse incentives to fudge the data out there, and then pretty soon they're hanging people on bad data. Very Kafka-esque world of. Yeah. Go ahead.
so based on So based on what Tim just said, here you think about it. Okay, one, there's a bunch of different disparate databases that you're going to have to check out. Okay, to make sure that let's put it this way: you've got the company that's managing the student loan. Okay, and they're not supposed to really do anything until somebody graduates from the university or college or whatever their school they're attending. All right. There's no audit being able. There's no ability to do an audit because one, the government's systems are not connected to the university's systems, so they have no way of knowing if somebody graduated. So now you got the company. You got the company that's sitting there saying, okay, hey, we've been checking on this kid for a year, knowing full well that the government can't do the audit because they can't connect to the university system to see if the kid graduated or not.
They report to the thing is the connection. Okay, they do report to the government the graduation. They report to they report that the universities say this guy's graduated. He has student loans and he's graduated.
When he graduates.
When he graduates. However, the fact of the loan exists with the lender or the guarantor.
Right.
Okay. So they know that they're going to be collecting on that loan after the guy graduates. Well, what the heck? We'll start asking now.
Yeah.
Right. And when they go and say this guy, so if a certain number of them will go into default, okay, on a certain schedule that the government will then pay the guarantor off for guaranteeing the loan. Well, the government actually guarantees the loan, and then they pay the student loan guarantor off, and they get their money. So, and they get their money faster if they're able to send the government a file of collection efforts. So there's a little database out there with the student loan account attached to it. It says we did all this collection effort, and they're not saying, and the government doesn't exactly make the connection, right? Mm-hmm. They don't exactly run. They don't run an algorithm that says look at all the graduations and compare that to when the collection effort actually started. They weren't doing that. They were accepting the whole data collection file as true, and that was, and so they were defrauding us and defrauding the government and defrauding the student to a certain extent. So the whole thing is the day. This is all set up to exploit. Data can be used to exploit the population. And that's what, these guys want to do. What these guys want to do is to be able to further exploit populations, and eventually just destroying the American economy, because you'll destroy trust. Once trust is destroyed, then, people, people don't respect, they begin to do fraud on their own.
Well, isn't that the same thing as what the attempts with the election system, the electoral, the whole system of electing somebody to public office is being slowly destroyed because they keep questioning whether or not it's legitimate. And if you put into people's minds that, their vote is not being counted, that, there's something, nefarious going on in the election system, which is, in my opinion...
Go ahead, I'm sorry?
No, well, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most legitimate systems we have out there.
Right.
And
people seem to have a problem. We have a problem communicating the issue of scale to them. That a few people walking into this precinct who shouldn't be voting there, all right, are not going to change a presidential election.
Right. That's very true.
Right. It is so difficult to fudge this many systems and this many votes to cause it to go a certain way and have all the other data look right. Right?
Yeah. One of the things that they people don't also realize is that every one of these election systems, even county by county, can be literally different. So different, in fact, that for somebody to be able to hack into it and change the numbers that much is next to impossible because of the fact that they're each separate individual systems out there. I mean, how many counties do we got in this country? Every one of them can have a different system. Yeah, but every one of them can have a different election system, set up. And also the thing I've also noticed is that, like in Lake County, Illinois, where I'm at, okay, once the ballots have all been cast, they close the doors to the precinct. They then begin the process of tearing things down, matching up numbers, making sure everything matches, the number of ballots they've got compared to the number that's on the computer and all this stuff. But that computer's not connected to the county clerk's office where the final count is done. What they literally have to do is to take all of those paper documents and the little memory stick, all right, and they have to carry it. Somebody takes it over to the county clerk in Waukegan, Illinois. So there's you think about it, every county is doing that. How do you can't possibly hack into the system.
Right. That's the scale that's needed. Well, until they make it all standard, and then
Exactly.
those in control can go and say, well, you have to make it look this way, right?
Yeah.
Which,
you got to do it this way. You got to do
which is
it that way.
which is the plan. Yeah. Our database indicates you're not really a registered voter. That's all I got to say. And their our certified mega database says that you're not a registered voter, and that's I'm sure that's part of the plan too. With the huge integrated database, we're trying not to say their names so that we won't be squished. So this is a major problem that. Needs to be stopped. Now, the funny thing is, it's going to get stopped to a certain extent when they try to implement it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, they have no. Go ahead.
To give an example, okay, and as you know, I have a recent example, where I used to work at, and I'm not going to say the place, okay, that doesn't matter, but what they were trying to do, and a lot of folks out there who are in IT and understand, the complexities of trying to do this, they were trying to switch over from an old mainframe system to SAP. Now, there's an old joke out there about what SAP stands for, which is stop all production, because it literally does.
Yes.
And they were paying this consulting firm to help them set this up huge amounts of money. Now, an old friend of mine who used to set up these SAP systems says it shouldn't take any longer than a couple of years, maybe 3 at most, he goes. The company I worked for has been doing it for 7 years. 7 years. And they just recently stopped the project. The point I'm making here, though, is that Peter Thiel and Elon Musk may think that they can set this huge database up, overnight. Well, we'll just use AI. It's like it's magic. It's impossible to do. There is no way that they're going to be able to set up any kind of a system that quickly, no matter who they are.
I think what AI would end up doing on its own is deleting all kinds of files.
Oh, God, yeah.
This is inefficient. This is inefficient. The only way I can achieve my goal is by eliminating a whole bunch of data. And do we really need that data? Because that's one of the questions you get asked in the data conversion. Those files over here, are we still using that data? Let's get rid of that. Let's not do that for So AI would be.
Think about that too. With an old, and especially with the government systems, they're a lot like this company I'd worked for. We have, it's an old mainframe system. And God only knows how many old tables and different files and different accounts that they've got in there that are totally outdated and what have you. I mean, it could be lots of them, but they do have the code set up to account for those. As we learned.
Well, it's almost like, because remember in the 90s, in our careers, was that there was the next programming language, there was the next database platform, there was always the next one, and you either had the ability to keep up with that, or you became a project manager, or a business analyst. Yeah. So but the whole zeitgeist above and it seemed like, wow, there's something new to learn, something new to learn. This is great. This is great. Some more money to be made, because no one has this skill yet. And so I'm the new guy, I'm one of the new employees who does. But at the higher level, what was really driving it was the constantly kill the previous version, all the way back to wanting to kill, and they still haven't successfully killed COBOL.
Yeah.
Because COBOL has its uses and has its logic and still works, but it was a
Are they still
constant
using
effort.
Fortran?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was
Yeah.
another one for you. Go ahead.
There's some scientific applications. I'm still running Fortran, I'm sure, but there was almost always, an effort to kill whatever is the latest. Oh, that's not good anymore. Well, that company is not as big as this company. Had that happen, and so it was a constant effort to kill, the previous. I mean, Java is now kind of like it's still out there, but even it, not so much. Python, I guess, is the newer platform or the newer.
Well, a lot of them are also using, C sharp.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Well, the
Okay,
C
and
languages seem to be the more resilient of
yeah,
the.
But Java's still pretty heavily used out there,
Yeah,
and that because we were using it where I worked at,
yeah,
and that. But we also use C sharp, C++ is still being
uh-huh.
used, in
Right.
that, and so,
Well, I think it
but
slowed down. The murdering of the previous legacies
oh yeah,
has
oh
slowed
yeah,
down a
yeah.
little bit. But it was a constant thing where you're kind of like, I'm sad because I know I'm not going to learn this new programming language. I'm just not up to
Hey,
it.
some of the people at this place, they're old mainframe programmers and all that, and all they were doing was waiting for this thing to be transferred over to SAP, and they were going to retire because they had been at it for 30, 40 years, and building this, and it was a
Yeah.
hodgepodge system. A lot of companies do this, where they just kept building on top of the mainframe.
Right.
And so now you're trying to convert that old mainframe, but the whole point of our
Well,
conversation was it takes forever.
here's one of the things they want to cut out. They want to cut out regulation, which would require CSV, computer system value validation. Okay, that validating because you're talking about the production of drugs. You're talking, which apparently they don't care about, but they want to. There's all kinds of bad things that can happen because they don't really the scope of what it would take to validate this database is beyond even AI comprehension at this time. I would say there
I
is
guess, I
not.
guess, yeah. I guess the point of the point we're trying to make here is the fact that all right, they can sit there and think that they can do this whole thing, and they think they can do it overnight. But the reality is that that's not going to happen. Another good example for you, and you and I had talked about this offline earlier, is HIPAA. All right.
Right.
The whole game plan there was that all of your medical information would be tied together so that whenever you went to a doctor, they would be able to just simply look it up and see it all. And that is yet to happen.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I don't know. So down here in St. Louis, in my experience, there's been some good. Well, Epic is one of the integrators, I think, and I think what they're doing, and I'm not sure of this. I've been out of the healthcare IT for a while, but I think what they've been doing is giving a sort of a from the patient's chart. They can look into. I can look into my Mercy activity. I can look into my BJC healthcare activity. Their WashU physicians group, things like that. And I'm not sure how many of them are seeing everything that I see. It could be they're just providing a pathway where the at least the patient is able to integrate all that information because it's been handy. But again, yeah, you're right. They're not there yet. Well, there's
I
still
have,
the dental community. The dental community, they just their billing
oh yeah,
systems even are
oh
funky.
yeah.
It's
I mean, get an example. I have on my telephone, okay, as you can see here, okay.
yeah,
Now, on my phone, I've got one for Northwestern Systems. I've got one for Advocate Systems. And there's one called MyChart. Um,
yep. I
and
think
that,
that's the
and
epic.
then,
I think
yeah,
that's the epic.
Well, but here's the thing. Northwestern, which is a different hospital system, Advocate, which is a different hospital system, and neither the twain shall talk.
So that-
and that's the point that I'm just it just amazes me. I go to my primary, okay, and they're not connected to anybody's system. He's one of those. I mean, most doctors are associated somewhere along the line,
Yes.
with the
Yeah.
hospital system. They are basically employees of the hospital system. But my primary is not. He's an independent. He's out there on his own. And now he can practice medicine at each of these places like Northwestern or Advocate, but he can't connect to their system.
Right.
You're
Right.
like, okay, or get this. I have one doctor where I go in, it's my spine specialist, and I go in and I talk with him, and basically I say to him, what was it? Sorry about that. I'm humming and hawing. They had asked me if I had ever had a procedure done, and I go, I don't remember. And all this, and they go, isn't it in the system? And they go, oh, well, we can't see it here in the exam room. We have to go to another computer.
Yes,
to go see
I've heard
it."
that one. Yes.
I just started
Yes,
laughing.
I-
I'm going,
yeah.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I've had that happen too, where he's got his laptop there, and he's doing some stuff, but he can't go on and see my stuff there, right?
Yeah.
Which there might be some security issues with that, maybe, but yeah, I'd have to see what the rationale for that was. The back to the administration and INSEPRATE. So there's this thing called the Computer Matching and Privacy Protection Act back in 1988. When things were just getting started, really, in a way, and they made a whole set of rules like you can't. Federal agencies were restricted in which other agencies they could share information with. And of course, that has to be what they're trying to dismantle, is that so that they can share information with each other without restriction, and they can be integrated without restriction. They can all be They can share all their data with the master database, right? say that a certain way, master. So they got to kind of what we'd be watching for, I think, in the federal courts is how the suits may go for against them breaking the computer matching and privacy act. So that's what I think we look for. Yeah.
So to wrap this all up, Tim, and that because we're near the end of our time here, and that I think folks, so everybody knows what we're planning on doing is a weekly podcast for right now. Okay, and it's just a lot of it's just going to be a conversation concerning an issue and our thoughts on it and our insights on it, and we want to be able to share that with everybody out there and we of course are going to welcome your thoughts back. All right, you're going to be able to find us on Substack. We'll also post this on YouTube, and we'll go from there and see how it works out. Because we both have a lot of experience. I mean, not just in IT, but in particular in politics, and that So, we welcome ideas, we welcome suggestions. Hey, we'll even take criticism. But keep in mind, we are two grumpy old men. So I'm Rich Garland.
Exactly.
Thank you much
I'm
for listening.
Bagwell.
And we will see you next time.